Yes. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Devil's Advocate here on Weekly Armchair Sports Talk. I'm covering for hosting tonight. I'm Jamie, and I'm joined by Ellis and Reese. Cheers for joining, lads. Hope you're both doing okay. Of course, we've been robbed of sort of any Premier League football for United for the last fortnight, and we're now entering another international break, which obviously Ellis and I were saying backstage that, you know, it's duller than dishwater. I'd rather put a nail under my toe and kick the wall than endure more of these. But we've been given plenty of content to talk about, given the last few days as a United fan. We're going to discuss quite a few things tonight. We're going to discuss all the Maguire leaks, talking about Sancho and his England snub again, and the most surprising signing of the season, and whether or not our expectations as a club should be changing based on our performances as of late versus where we were sort of at the start of the season. But first, we'll kick things off with the Maguire leaks. Now, leaks at United aren't something that we're, just getting used to. These are things that have happened. It seems almost every month post Fergie. There was always something else coming out into the press, and everyone had their eyes on who they thought were the leakers. Supposedly those leakers have left the club, and now all of a sudden Mark Ogden comes out with another supposed leak straight from Maguire. Now, Ellis, have you had a chance to catch up on everything that's been said? And if so, give me your thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah, most things. I read about his pace claim or something about De Gea. It's just all pretty weird, to be honest. Like, I don't understand really the need. You've been dropped for a reason, and that's because you've not been good enough. Your performances have been awful. There's no need to start trying to blame other people. You're supposed to be the captain of the club, take responsibility and take it on the chin. I think that's what every Man United fan thinks, really. He needs to take responsibility for his poor performances, the players didn't do last season, but everyone takes responsibility for their own actions. It's a fundamental part of life, and I don't see why football's any different.
Yeah, absolutely. Reese, good to see you again, my friend. Give me your take. I'm sure you've got plenty to say about the Maguire situation.
Respectfully, I haven't really seen it. I've just heard. Really, I'm not really paying attention to any of his quote unquote bullshit. But I think one thing is it's being criticised about it is there's two sides to it. That there's people that think Mark Ogden's just given as a personal bias against Maguire. It's just against certain players. Me personally, I just don't think that there is any genuine situation. I think there's two sides to the one coin. I don't think it's split difference. I think not exactly Maguire's biggest fan and never will be, but I think Ellis is on that since he is right. Like, players should take their own actions, like any player should, any responsible human being would. But I haven't really seen the comments, so I can't really say much on it. But I will find that, like I said, I've criticised players for it last year. I'm not going to turn around and not be a hypocrite about it. If these genuine comments have come out against it, then he really needs to realistically be spoken to, and handled in a right manner. I think I'm not going to say the club should strike him, but there should be a system in place for actions like this at the club. And if there's not, then that's actually quite worrying. It's quite alarming. But all in all, if it is genuine, obviously, if these are genuine comments that he's made, especially towards his teammates, obviously they're going to have split loyalty. We've already seen it clicks in the club. We've got the Portuguese South American contingent that speak like the Brazilians on it. Obviously, they speak the same language as Portuguese, so they're going to band together. Obviously, you've got the English speaking players, and then you've got the players split in the middle that are new to the club or just being promoted. They're going to have to decide who is one way or another. Our club is full of cliques, so you're either with Maguire or you're against them. It's the same if you're with the team, you're not with the team. It's going to cause so many issues. Frankly, there needs to be a sit down both with the manager and Maguire, and I think Maguire needs to have a sit down and address these as well, because I don't think he's actually came out and mentioned anything. So I think that's another thing. Obviously, we speak about guilty until proven innocent, or end of the day, I'd rather this be addressed properly. And he has to come out and address this. He has to come out and address it one way or another. And I think Mark Ogden really needs to address where he gets the sources from as well, because this sort of accusation as well will go against him as well, especially his credibility, because he's a good journalist. But one thing is for sure, once your credibility gets questioned as well, that's going to be an even bigger question.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to address this comment from Hello, it's good to see you in the comments again. I've seen this come out on Twitter, and apparently it isn't somebody that's necessarily close to Maguire. But for me, that gives the impression that Ogden's trying to protect whoever his source is with that. And there's been some more leak that's come out and said that actually this isn't anyone close to Maguire, but the format in which the information has been passed on to the journalist and then reported, it seems to mirror everything else that we've experienced over the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, with the stuff coming out supposedly from Lingard, from Henderson, and from some of the other leakers. Now, granted, not all of it was necessarily absolute slander and nonsense. I think there's a massive portion of it, to Ellis, I think was hit the nail on the head, that this is a player who is the club captain of Manchester United, not taking responsibility and ownership of his errors and mistakes. But I think there was one particular quote where it turned around and said, if you'd have swapped Harry Maguire and Ruben Dias, put Maguire in that City team, he'd excel, and Ruben Dias would have struggled in this United team. And I don't necessarily think there's anything too outlandish about that claim. I said when the Chelsea links came out earlier in the summer, when it said that they were interested in Harry Maguire, that Maguire in that back three with Thiago Silva and Koulibaly probably would work quite well, and he'd end up looking like a good defender again. It's clear that he just doesn't fit into the system. Now, whether or not this entire period of drama has legs, whether or not it's come from a dressing room source, whether it is nonsense that's been drummed up, I think it spells trouble for a player that already divides the fan base, splits opinion. He's the most expensive centre half in the world, in the history of transfers. We've said this many a time on the show that the player is not at fault for the transfer fee, but it unfortunately will always carry baggage of some of the fans, and this is now another reason for United fans to sort of jump on him. Now, I'll come back to you, Reese. Obviously, we've looked a lot better with Maguire out of the side, starting with Varane and Martinez. This now adds fuel to the fire that he should be nowhere near the starting 11 until, like you say, he maybe comes out and addresses this. Do you think that it's potentially time up at Old Trafford for Maguire? Do you think that he'll be stripped of the armband and potentially be looking for a club as we move forward towards the January transfer window, and then obviously to a further extent the summer transfer window?
I don't think he'll get stripped immediately, but I did say back in the summer that I don't expect Maguire to be the long-term captain. I think Ten Hag only stuck with him purely because he was only just coming into the club, and it's better to stick with what you've got already than make a more refined decision after 1 year, after you've known the squad more fully. Do I think we sell him? I don't know, because obviously he's on good wages as well, and we would want to try and get as much money as we can. The question is, how much money would we ask for? The World Cup could potentially define it as well. Like, if he does go in as a decent tournament, that might change opinion as well. We've seen what fans are like when players go to international tournaments where they're not in the best of form. They end up having a great tournament. They come back and they're actually looking forward to seeing it. Personally, I don't want Maguire here. Like, that's not because I don't like him as a man. I just don't rate him as a player. I've always been consistent with that. I don't think he's Man United quality. But then again, you have to get rid of him. We're not the best at selling players for good value as well. We'd be at a massive loss anyway. And we'd have to go out and make signings. And we've already seen from comments recently about focusing on just the summer transfer windows. And if that's the case, then we wouldn't sign a centre-back in January. We'd probably have to rely on what we've got, which isn't particularly the best anyway, because that's 3 centre-backs. One's injury-prone. One's just new to the Premier League, but has settled really well, and he's already our best centre-back. And the other, Lindelof, gets slated by so many fans because they think he isn't good enough, when in fact he is. He's just who you play him with. You just can't play him with Maguire. It just doesn't work. Yeah, if we do move him on, though, as well, it has to fit to him as well. And there aren't many clubs that fit him, especially like pound for pound, style for style. There aren't many clubs that fit him. Leicester can't afford him, so I doubt he goes back there. Chelsea are not going to sign him now. It begs to differ. I think we're just stuck with him. I think we are. And I suppose the only reasonable punishment you can do is put him in the reserve team.
Yeah, exactly. Ellis, how about you? What do you think? Is there a way back for Maguire from this? Again, regardless of whether or not this has been, leaked from him himself, from a source, whether it's made up nonsense or not, it's something that's clearly hit a note and struck a chord with the fan base. So do you think that there is a way for Maguire to sort of beat these claims and restrike some sort of relationship with the United fan base, or is it time up?
See, I don't know. See, the whole Maguire leaks and stuff. It's either one or two things. Either that's true, or it's just bang average journalism from Mark Ogden, which is really strange because he's normally a good tier of source, and you can normally trust his information. But that just seems to me bang average and lazy. But in terms of Maguire, I think Maguire 2 years ago was everything that United needed around 3 years ago because we were a counter-attacking team that played in our own half, and Maguire didn't have to play on the halfway line. But now he doesn't. I think. He's not Manchester United quality. We all know this, but I think he does get some unnecessary criticism. But at the same time, he's not Man United level. I mean, regardless of whether he's going to get sold, is there a buyer that want him? Is there a system that's going to suit him? You said Chelsea, but are Chelsea going to go back in from after just spending 70 on Fofana? Probably not. Is there a way back? I think there's always room for squad depth. I think with the World Cup, fixtures are going to be packed out as soon as we come back from the World Cup, and you're going to need every man fit and every man available. And whether that's Harry Maguire or Bruno Fernandes, you're going to need them. So. I think we're just gonna have to stick with him, really.
Yeah, I agree with your point there. Because obviously the biggest question for me then is, can you go from being an 80 million centre half, given the captaincy of Manchester United, to being a squad player, and would you be happy with that? I mean, he's up against it. Martinez and Varane have decided to form a very, very good partnership, and we're still early days into that partnership. They've come up against a bit of a plethora of different teams but all who attack in a similar way. You know, I'd be interested to see how they deal with with Mitrovic. You know, when we come up against Fulham, you know, the problems that Haaland might cause us. You know, there's going to be different tests out there, and maybe sterner tests. Excuse me. But is Maguire going to be happy playing a squad role after he's been given the captaincy of a club like Manchester United?
If that's his level, then he's got to accept it. If that's where the club view him at, and that's where his performances deserve him to be, which they do, then he has no choice but to accept it. Like you picked on your performances. You're not picked on who you are or what your price tag is or what you think you are to the club. You picked on your performances. Every player is as bad as his last game. Harry Maguire's been poor, so therefore he needs to accept his role because he's not been poor. If he ups his game and puts in worldly performances, then he deserves to start, but he's not. So therefore he doesn't.
Yeah, spot on. Now, one thing, just obviously, what Reese, just to touch on what you were saying there, one of the issues that we find ourselves with Maguire now is, given the money that we paid for him, given the money that we pay him per week, we're going to struggle for suitors to come in for him, or we're going to have to cut our losses and accept, you know, a huge loss on him. Now, what is it about United transfers that leaves us in this position so often? Why? You look at City. You look at, I don't know, thinking of other Bayern Munich. You look at some of these other big clubs across the world who I'm thinking off the top of my head seem to do very good business most of the time. What City, for example, City bought Raheem Sterling 7 years ago for £50 million. He's been their second highest assist provider behind Kevin De Bruyne and the second highest goal scorer behind Sergio Aguero, and they still managed to sell him for the same fee that they paid for him. Yeah. And recouped all that money despite getting longevity out of a player at his prime and in his prime and at his peak. Yet we're here now, 3 years after signing Harry Maguire, sitting here going, if somebody offered £30 million for him, I'd snatch their hands off. What do you think the difference is, and why do we struggle to recoup big money that we pay and for all these transfers? There's probably, I know the answer, but I'm very interested to hear what you have to think about it.
I think the very simple answer is operation. Like it's pure operation for me that how we are compared to other clubs, and this is going to sound funny, but I actually think it's accurate. Manchester United have no pull. See, when it comes to we have pull when it comes to buying players, but when it comes to attracting offers to move players on or anyone of interest, we don't have that. I don't think we generally have that at all, because you look at in terms of who we've made for profit, the only ones that really stand out, funnily enough, are Daniel James and Chris Smalling. If that.
I don't even, Chris Smalling wasn't even a profit that we made on him, was it? We managed to move him away for money.
I don't know if Daley Blind was a profit. I think that's what I'm thinking of. I don't even know. That's worrying. We don't make profit. We are forever debt ridden. Doesn't matter if it's through debt of not getting players on, or if it's just debt in general because we've got owners that are more scumbags than worldwide. Well, actually, I could have said something else, but I'm not going to. But It really is worrying that I generally don't think we have that sort of pull. We don't have that type of commanding of the transfer window where if an offer comes in, we can go, no, we want a little bit more. This is why. And then a club's actually going to accept it. If you go to Bayern Munich and you offer them 60 million for, I'll just say an example, Jamal Musiala as an example, 60 million, Bayern Munich go, no, he's 19 years old, turning 20. He's a long-term option for us. He's either going to replace Thomas Muller or he's going to replace Serge Gnabry. He's either going to play in the wing or he's going to play for the 10. All right, how much do you want from? We want 90 million. Right, that's more understandable. There you go, done. And that's pure operation because they believe in the long-term value of their player. Whereas if we go, Harry Maguire, he's been here 3 years. He broke Pallister's record of playing consecutive games without getting injured, then coincidentally gets injured against his former club. He's done nothing for us ever since. Yeah, we paid 80 million, but we value him at a certain amount of money. How much do you want from him? We want like 50 million. Nah, we don't see that. 30 million. All right, cheers, no bother. See you later. Like that's our problem. We don't have operation that actually commendable by people that know what they're doing. We're still run by clowns.
Yeah,
we don't have a sporting project. Like, there's no sporting definition in our club. You look at Manchester City, they have a sporting project. Liverpool have a sporting project. Bayern Munich, all the elite clubs have sporting projects. We haven't for years. We've been run by bankers that just know nothing about football. You look at the amount of players that we've signed and just let go for free. Ander Herrera, 69, possibly one of the... He was a very good Manchester United player and fought for the badge, and we just let him walk for free to PSG. Where's the sporting? Where's the mind behind that? Because who do we bring in? Who do we bring next season? Who do we bring in the next season? We didn't even bring in a midfielder to cover the gap. Just making do with the deadwood that we think. There's no long-term refreshment of the club. You look at Liverpool's squad. Mane's gone from that. And that director came out and said that squad needs to be replenished every 3 or 4 years. And that's exactly what they're doing now. They've just bought a new long-term, a right back that's going to come in and potentially play in that Calvin Ramsey. They're just going to sign Darwin Núñez, who we all joke about, but he's probably going to be their long-term number 9. They've just spent 70 million on him. Yeah. They brought in Fabio Carvalho. Elliott's come through. There's a whole new generation of Liverpool players coming through that are just going to go straight into Klopp's system. So City have just changed their complete demographic and brought in another number 9. And they've brought Alvarez in at the same time, so they're going to gel all together. We don't have that. We stick the same players on big contracts until they just run out and leave for free. And then we're stuck there going, we're going to be in transition again. We need a big summer window. And then we spend 250 million in the window and all the fan base acts like we're going to win the league and all the problems have gone away. When it's just not true. There's no sporting model, there's no long-term idea, and there's no brains in the operation, as Reece rightly said.
That's lack of sporting integrity as well. It's lack of sporting integrity.
Yeah, spot on. I can't disagree with anything that either of you have said. And one of the things I think is really interesting, because I've been saying this for quite some time, is that I think for the last 2-3 years, every show that I've ever done, I've always said that United have no pull. Like, there is no pull anymore, because what people seem to forget about is that these players that are growing up now and coming through their youth academy systems and becoming fully fledged professionals have not been growing up in an era of United dominance like people did 15 years ago.
Exactly.
You know, you think, I can't even think of his name off the top of my head. The kid that came on for Arsenal at the weekend, the guy's 15 and a bit, right? So by the time he was 5 years old, we'd won our last Premier League title in that 12-13 season. He wouldn't have even noticed about football at that point, realistically. You know, he might have known a little bit about what's going on, but then he's grown up in an era where we've been poor. So you're telling me that players around that sort of age that have seen what we've been like are going to grow up dreaming of playing for Manchester United? They're not. And this is where the culture shift comes in, because kids did not grow up dreaming of playing for Manchester City unless they were born in Stockport or they were born around Eastlands, right?
Or they were born in a recycling centre.
But yeah, there you go. They grew up dreaming of playing for Manchester United. That's going to change. That will change. People will sit there and see City as this elite sporting project with, you know, arguably the best manager of the last 10 years at the helm, who constantly get things right. And we're going to get left by the wayside. And we end up in this situation. I'm just going to try and take it back to the general comics. Otherwise, we'll be here for it's a really good topic. we end up here where we're paying £80 million for Harry Maguire, who supposedly, you know, grew up supporting Manchester United. You know, the day he made his debut was supposedly the best day of his life. And he's now in a position where he's doing more bad for the club than good. Just like pretty much 95% of our transfers post-Fergie is that we sign them on big money, on big wages. We struggle to shift them on when they don't fit the system that the new manager comes in that we inevitably bring in because we haven't backed the previous manager. It all just goes tits up. fingers crossed, right? Things will change under Ten Hag. He does strike me as a manager that will grab, as soon as Maguire's back from international break, we'll drag him into the office and be like, what's going on here? Like, tell me what's happened here and explain to me. And hopefully we start to see some form of change, because Daniel James is the only player post-Fergie that we have made a profit on. And that is ridiculous. And if that doesn't talk about our transfer policy enough, then I don't know what does.
I think another thing as well when it comes to pool is the perfect example is like the players that we were looking at in the summer, like Ten Hag, like coming in, like looking at the Ajax players, the Dutch players he wanted. One of them was Gravenberch, 35 million release clause, but I guarantee we'd have to spend 50 million, whereas Bayern Munich got him for bang on the release clause.
Yeah,
like that's a proper club pool.
Realistically, nothing's going to change until the parasites at the top are out, and that's just a fact of this club.
Exactly.
That's just a fact. Nothing will change until they're gone, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, even after it will still be a couple of years afterwards. It will still be a couple of years after they're gone, but I would still take 2 years of hell after they've gone, just for change to be embedded.
Look at the losses that we've posted today. You know, the fact that even if they want to run this club like a business, whatever, right? But if you are at the top of a failing business, the last thing that you should be doing is taking dividends out of your failing business, because the shareholders and the people below you in a regular business would go, "What are you playing at?" Yet we're in a position now where we're continuously strapped with even more debt season after season, despite the fact that these absolute parasites are taking money out of our club. So yeah, I agree with you, Ellis. Nothing will change until they're gone.
Yeah, we're hemorrhaging cash. That's what we're doing. We're hemorrhaging cash.
And we will continue to do so until they're ousted finally, until we no longer become a profitable venture for them and they decide to finally cut ties, cut their losses, and sell us to Jim Ratcliffe. But anyway, that's another show and another topic, because we could talk for hours on that. At the end of the season, with Anthony purchasing Maguire, do you see other football teams? This is a really good point. And I think one of the problems that we have had, mainly under Woodward, but it seems to still be trickling through under Arnold, is this thing that we don't have bargaining power. Now, I don't know whether that comes from this idea that our travelling delegation of negotiators does not consist of necessarily footballing people and football intelligence. A lot of it is just money and vibes. Richard Arnold fancied a bit of a trip out to Barcelona, I think 4 times in the transfer window, so he could have a Corona and go and look, see if the Sagrada Familia has been finished yet. But yeah, I think clubs will look at us and think we have no bargaining resolve. We are not a good club when it comes to sitting down around a table and going, right, you value this player at £70 million. We want to spend closer to £50 million. So why don't we meet in the middle somewhere and we'll pay £60 million for him? We don't end up with that, because people will come and just pull our pants down and go, you can either pay £150 million or you can do one. And we just end up going, yeah, you know what, go on. And I think that comes down to, and I'll get both of your opinions on this, is that we don't identify 1 or 2 or 3 selections for a player. We don't scout in an effective enough manner that allows us to have multiple players that that fit the same profile, play in the same system, and give us options. We go all in for one player. Look at Frankie de Jong. Granted, Frankie de Jong is probably one of the best at what he does, but there are players out there that mirror his style of play on the pitch. But we don't have a good enough scouting department to go, all right, okay, Barcelona aren't budging. We're having issues here. Let's go for option B. The closest we came was when Ajax weren't budging for Anthony and we were going to go in for Gakpo, despite the fact they're being slightly different profile of players. But at least there was a plan B on the table. But yeah, interesting to get your thoughts. Ellis, you look like you want to come in and say something there, pal.
It just doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm going to use City again, but as much as it pains me to say it, they're just such a good sporting project that they're the only good example you can use. You're telling Calvin Phillips is not Man City's number one midfield target this summer. It was Jude Bellingham. They could not get Jude Bellingham, so they went, we'll go to plan 2 or plan 3, which is Calvin Phillips, and just went and paid the money Leeds wanted, which is 45 million. They've got themselves a Premier League proved midfielder for squad depth. We don't have anything like that. It's the same. It's big wages. Like, no, we can't be taken seriously. The Anthony deal, we just spent how much? About 88 million, like in British pounds. That deal could have been done for 60 at the start of the window, but we didn't take it. But we were focusing on De Jong because we had that one target, and we spent, as you said, look at our Coronas in Barcelona and everything. But the deals were there to be done at the start of the summer, and we dilly-dallied and we waited. And when it came to crunch time, and we just been beat 4-0 off Brentford and 2 on a Brighton, they were a bit like, oh my actual days, it's not going to work. We're not going to get De Jong. and they've just gone and spent 70 million on Casemiro. Great player, world class. Is he going to be here in 10 years? Is he going to be here in 6 years? No, he's not. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. It felt panicked. Everything Man United did at the end of the window was panicked. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, we've added improvements. It was panicked, and we've been absolutely held ransom. Anthony should have been done for £60 million at the start of the window because Ten Hag wanted him. He was a priority signing, but we wanted Frankie de Jong, who was never going to come. That deal was always hinging on Frankie de Jong saying that he wanted to come, and we knew since May that he didn't want to come. So why did we spend 5 months chasing it if it wasn't going to happen? It just doesn't make any sense. An elite club does not run like that. Like, that's just not how it works.
Yeah, we are just career mode shortlisting vibes, aren't we? Richard Arnold definitely sits there searching players on FIFA and goes, "Oh, there we go. You know, he's got these traits. He's got 88 pace.
He's a walkout on FIFA."
Exactly. So let's go in for him. Now, I completely agree with you, Reece. Have you got anything you want to add on to that before we quickly move on?
Not really. I think the only other thing that you could add is there's clubs that have like directors of football, and then they've got like people who will go and do like negotiator and all that. But the one thing they will do is they will always feed back, well, this negotiation is not breaking down. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Like that is a thing about having that. The one thing we don't have, besides sort of a sporting project, I mean, there is one there. It's just not as advanced as City and Liverpool. It won't be for quite a while. One thing we just don't have is individuals with a backbone. Like, if you walk in, like, if we walked into Man United right now and asked, like, who does what, they'll turn around and go, I think it's him. Or who's the manager? It's that bald guy over there. Right, so at least they figured that one out. All right, so who's the guy who's running the club? He's stuck in America because he can't be fucked. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you walk into Barcelona, if you walk into, like, even though it's a shithole, if you walk into Real Madrid, if you walk into Bayern Munich, if you walk into AC Milan, you walk into Man City, you walk into Liverpool, you walk into Chelsea, although to be fair, their owner's a bit sketchy as well. Like, you look at all of them, you could easily pinpoint 4, 5, 6 people that you know that's exactly who is in charge of everything that's important. We don't have that as well, and I think our scouting department is quite good. I mean, we scouted 804 right backs and signed a nobody that doesn't know how to play football. We must have a good scouting department.
We'll have no Wan-Bissaka slander here. I still love the guy.
You can love a player that can't defend or attack, whereas I will love a football club that I expect to do better. But just in general, like, you just look at our club and there's nothing there except Ten Hag trying to get something. I also think as well, criticism as well when it comes to transfers, he has to take some blame as well. Like, his stubbornness is a problem. Like, he could have said, let's go and get another player, but he was insistent on De Jong. Like, the manager has to take criticism for that as well. Not just Murto and Arnold, who are completely useless. He has to take some of it as well, like, for his stubbornness, like, towards insistence on certain players and only players that fit his team. You said earlier on, I think it's spot on, like, not every single player is going to be exactly the same, but there are players who fit a similar profile of playing from deep positions or can play from the front, like, really effectively. We don't have to spend 90 million on Frankie de Jong when you could have got, well, I don't know, Ruben Neves as an example, or an Ismail Benaka from Milan, or you could have got someone from the French league, like, or even from the Portuguese league. Brilliant for developing players. Like, we seem to be going through the Portuguese route anyway. We're just a bigger Wolves. Like, we should have just done that. If that's our profile, just signing players of that ilk, then that's what we should have done. But we don't think in that manner. And for all the good that Ten Hag is doing on the sporting side, it's his stubbornness to get his favourites over the line, which has effectively cost them a key player in De Jong, when we could have just moved on. As Ellis said, we could have moved on at the very start of June. We could have been, well, fine, let's just go and get Anthony, let's go and get another midfielder in, and let's prepare properly. But no, we really don't know how to do that.
Do you think if De Jong comes in January or the summer, this changes what we just talked about? If De Jong comes in January or he comes in the summer, do you think it changes everything that we just talked about?
I don't see any signings coming in. I don't see any signings coming in.
I do think that Ten Hag must have had some positive signs and some encouragement from Frankie de Jong that he wanted to join the project. Otherwise, we wouldn't have pursued him as hard. Because you look at, as soon as Jurrien Timber seemed to make his choice known, we immediately stopped pursuing him and we brought in Martinez, which obviously worked out for the best. Same with Ryan Brobley. You know, as soon as he supposedly spoke to Ten Hag on the phone and said, you know, look, I've got unfinished business at Ajax, maybe in the future, but for now, we didn't pursue him anymore. There was one tenuous link, and then straight away. So for me, I do think that the door's probably still maybe open. You know, there's these talks at the minute of Barcelona wanting to renegotiate his contract, and they see him as a long-term replacement for Sergio Busquets, which is not Frankie de Jong's footballing MO at all. Like, he does not play in a similar role. We saw in pre-season when he played in that lone six role that he was just absolutely left-stranded. So potentially, if they want him to be a long-term replacement for Busquets, that might feed into Ten Hag's hand a little bit more, that he can offer him closer and more akin to the role that he wants. But we'll see where we go. I think that, you know, just a couple of the comments that have come in just then. I think obviously we got rid of a lot of the Woodward people in the scouting department, in the head of the media, stuff like that. So there has been a bit of a change at the club. I just think it'll take a lot of time, because scouting, I don't think, is as simple as just watching players. It's all about connections. It's all about the networks that you build, and it's about someone's footballing intelligence to be able to identify somebody. And then in terms of a negotiation tactic and the people that sort out our transfers, you need people that have those connections, that have those relationships across Europe, where they can get a drop in on an agent or on a manager just to maybe test the waters a little bit. I don't think we do that. I think we're the opposite. I think we come in with a battering ram and try and knock the door down and go, we're here. We've got £80 million to burn. Let us know.
You need somebody that can be shrewd as well. You need somebody that can be quite shrewd as well, and like in that sense where, like, yeah, we don't have to, like, if we want to go for the more expensive option, then fine. I've got no issue with that. Like, it's not our money, that, in the sense that it's not my money, it's not your money, but it's the sense that it will force hands if we have to spend more money, because it will obviously, the debt continues to rise as well. The more that does, the more alarm bells get questioned on the owners, and obviously about what they're going to do as well. Because once their cash cow is gone, all that money, they cannot take dividends out of something that has nothing in there anymore. There's nothing to retrieve. So, like, a shrewd operator is going to, as much as I want to say save money, I don't, but I would rather the money be used more wiser than it does. And I think that's what we lack. We lack somebody who is shrewd in the market. I don't think Myrtle is. Like, I know people highlighted he was because he'd done the Malacia deal, but what, 12 million isn't exactly shrewd when that's what his market value was anyway. Like, that's like, we got him for exactly what he's worth, like, which is, funnily enough, the funniest thing United have done in recent years, like getting someone for their exact market value. Yeah,
and look, and the thing is that we'll move on swiftly to another topic after this. You know, there's clearly been value in the market over the last 12 months, especially for midfielders. You look at Bruno Jimenez joining Newcastle. Apart from, again, a couple of tenuous links from Arsenal, he got a free path, and we should have challenged that. Matías Núñez going to Wolves, again, phenomenal footballer. You know, and he, you know, both of them £30 million signing, £35 million signing.
Palhinha at Fulham.
Exactly. Frank Kessie going to Barcelona on a free. You know, he for me should have been that number one choice instead of going for Casemiro. But anyway, we've spoken about that long enough, and we're going to put a positive spin on it now, because it's not all been doom and gloom when it comes to United's transfer work this summer. Obviously, the players that we've brought in do seem to have started well, which I'm going to say it with a bit of, you know, cautious positivity here, because it doesn't usually happen that. We don't usually have a transfer window where we see a group of players join the squad and most of them start to put in really good performances. Ellis, so I just want to know, who for you has been the biggest surprise package of a signing that we've made and has impressed you the most?
See, I think there's three names that we're all going to be kind of choosing between here, but I think I'm going to have to go with Christian Eriksen. Christian Eriksen, even though we all know that he's just a talented footballer, he's just come in and he's just changed the way we are on the ball. He's made us more tidy in possession, and he's just a great link between the midfield and the attack. We didn't have that last season. We were very lazy in possession. We didn't have that forward link that had linked the attacks together, and he just does that perfectly. I think he's really changed the way. We're more shrewd, as Reece used the term shrewd a couple of. We're more shrewd in possession. We're better on the ball, and I just think he's just been a revelation at United, and long may it continue, because I'm absolutely loving it, to be honest.
Absolutely. Reece?
Pretty much all the big signings have realistically stood out. I mean, Casemiro find his feet. He's a quality player. I think the one that's really has stood out is probably Malacia. I think purely for the sense that I've only ever watched him once, and he was brilliant in a losing final. I don't think, like, as much as Eriksen's quality, I knew I was getting with Eriksen. I knew I was getting with Antony. I knew I was getting with Lisandro Martinez. The one that you're realistically not going to really get anything is if you've only watched a player once. Is that ilk? I only ever watched Malacia once, and I was really impressed by see what he was capable in the league. He's come in, he's already made the left back actually worth watching again. Like, I think that's probably our most surprised signing, because we already knew what we're getting with Christian Eriksen. He's a phenomenal player. The only difference is the engine he's got is like he's taken up a level. That's the only surprise for me, is he's taken that up a level. Like, Martinez has slotted into the team really easily. I was all right with that because I knew he was going to be the best defender at the club anyway. Anthony's come in. I'm glad he's settled because we needed somebody of that ilk on the right wing. But nah, for me, 100%, it's Tyrell Malacia. 100%, because that finally the left back position looks sorted. Now we just need to ensure the rest of it is capable.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I agree with everything you said there. I think Malacia has been phenomenal. Martin is obviously absolutely outstanding, and Varane's been like a new signing alongside him. And I think with Eriksen, one of the things that has impressed me the most is how well Scott McTominay looks next to him. I've been quite surprised. I'm one of those that I always thought that McTominay was a good squad player, that he was, somebody we should keep in there for depth. But he seemed really comfortable having that short passing option to Eriksen and letting Eriksen do the rest. He's disrupted a bit of play. He'll receive the ball off the centre half, and then he'll just look for Eriksen. And I think in their partnership that they've been playing, we've seen some of the best out of Scott McTominay on a consistent basis. Because obviously, over the course of his United career, he's had those games where he's put in an 8 out of 10 performance, but then he'll go on a 6-week period of dropping 4s and 5s. And everyone used to shudder when they saw, Fred and McTominay next to each other. But next to Eriksen, he seems to really be developing his best brand of football. And yeah, straight here, I'm very interested whether or not that's a Ten Hag coaching method that he's been instructing McTominay in training, and he's really grabbed something out of him, or whether it is just playing next to Eriksen. He seems like a calm influence. I think playing Fred and McTominay next to each other, there was a lot of sort of chaos in there, and there was a lot of panicking. Pogba never really worked next to McTominay because he didn't provide that sort of defensive rigidity that Eriksen seems to provide. I'm not talking about necessarily being a tough tackler, but even just occupying the space. He does that so well, and again, the guy does not stop running. And so yeah, I've been absolutely again, I know what you're saying. We did know what we were getting with Eriksen. We knew what he was like when he was at Ajax. We knew what he was like, obviously, when he was at Spurs. Obviously, we all know what happened to him last year. But then to come back, to join Brentford, and to elevate Brentford to the level that he did, and then to come here on a free transfer and do it for United, what a boy, some boy.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything really special there with what McTominay's done. I think the obvious answer is he's just been told to keep it simple. I think generally that's literally his game. His game is simple when it works for him, and it's helpful that he's got a player of like quality beside him who just knows his role. McTominay's just keeping it really simple, and I think that's generally what's changed. The only difference is he's just got more confidence in himself. I mean, when I watched the game last night, I'm not a big fan of McTominay, but I watched him last night and he was all right for 90 minutes. He just needs to, if he just keeps his game simple, he's not going to do anything wrong. But when he tries to overcomplicate his role and he tries to be a creative player, which in no way, shape or form he is, that's when he gets found out with ease. I think if he just keeps it simple, he breaks the play, but he can go on a drive and run because he can run at people really well because he's got a big frame. I think that's fine, but when he tries to be that creative, over-exaggerated player, that's when he gets found out. And when he does get found out, that's when all the criticism comes in, and that's never going to change. Now, he'll score against you at the weekend, mate. Trust me.
I'm going to stay out of this rivalry. Nothing to do with us.
There's no rivalry. There's no rivalry there. There's no rivalry there. We'll beat them at Hampden, and that'll be the last of it.
But yeah, look, I think I understand what you're saying there, but I think compared to where he was, I think McTominay seems to have improved. Like you say, he's doing the simple things well, which is not always the case with him. And I think the squad as a whole just seems to be a completely different unit than after the Brentford game. So then the next question that we'll move on to then, and I'll come to you first, Ellis, is have the expectations for the season changed since that poor start that we had? This disruption to our Premier League season probably couldn't have come at a worse time. In terms of the momentum that we were building, we were playing good football, we were getting the results to go with that as well. Ten Hag nominated for Manager of the Month, which he more than deserves. So for me, the question I want to know is, do we have higher expectations, and what are the expectations for the rest of the season based on the performances so far?
No, I don't think our expectations should change. I think we're still in a transitional period. I think he's still trying to find out trying to find out about the squad, and we're still in a transitional phase. We're not the finished article. We're not going to be going on and winning titles. I think we're going to want to challenge for Champions League, and we're obviously going to want to challenge for the top. I'd like to think the top 4 and everything, but I think that's got to be the aim. I don't think we're going to get anything higher. I still think there's a lack of consistency potentially going forward. There's still obviously some insecurities and a little bit of lack of quality at times that we still do see. Even though we've been winning games, there is still a bit of a lack of quality there. So I do think we need to keep our level heads and a bit calm and just kind of think, give him his time. The first season, don't think too high, but the next season, potentially go for it. Because you do see the tactical prowess that he has, and you do see the ideas he has. It's just Rome wasn't built in a day. It's gonna take a long time. It's gonna be a process. We've just got to back it here, I think. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. Reese, what about you? Do we have higher expectations now? And what do you think is realistic for us towards the end of the season to be looking at?
I think the obvious aims are getting into the Champions League either by finishing the top 4 or win the Europa League. Personally, I think we should be aiming to win a trophy. I would take outside the top 4. I would if we win a trophy. If we won the FA Cup, if we won the Carabao Cup, but didn't finish in the top 4, I'd actually be all right with that. I think a trophy is far more important than league position at the minute, because the way we're going, it's going to be 6 years at the end of this season since we've last won a trophy. I don't care what anyone says. For me, that's completely unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. We should not be having a run like this. We've already done it before. We've been 41 years once we win a trophy. We're not going to go another 30 on. We can't do that. But in terms of how we should be going, the aim should be to get a trophy in for this team, because this team needs some sort of confidence behind them. The best way to get confidence is by winning some form of silverware. There's 3 trophies at stake for us, because we're not going to win the Premier League, not by a mile. But the Europa League's available, the FA Cup's available, the Carabao Cup's available. One of them is attainable. And if we just want to get for the top 4, then there's no point in us entering these competitions at all. We're in them to win them. As much as we're in a transitional phase, I completely agree with Ellis. We are in a transitional phase. The manager's trying to look for his best system, his best players to fit it, how he wants us to play. But I still think one of the priorities is to win a trophy, not to put any of them down, because right now we haven't won anything in years, so we're not entitled to pass over a competition. We should be in one of them to win it. That's how that's how it is with me. We've got to win something, regardless of our league position. We must pick up we must pick up a silverware this year.
Yeah, spot on. And like you say, it does seem attainable. I mean, I personally think that both are attainable. I think the top 4 and winning the trophy are attainable. I think
so do I.
I was always apprehensive about Chelsea's performance this season. I said that I thought they were coming to a really pivotal point for them. In terms of their squad age, in terms of what was happening, and look, they have been struggling. I wasn't convinced. As soon as Liverpool sold Mane, I thought that's a bad move for them, and that they'd struggle to implement Darwin Núñez at a time when they've just lost. Who, in my opinion, this is very important. My opinion was their best player, in Sadio Mane. I think that altered their system quite a lot, and I think that they are struggling with it. So, and obviously Arsenal were a proper false dawn for them, sitting where they are in the table. They've had the easiest run out of any of the top 6 sides. Their first difficult game that they came up against, they lost it. And they can say whatever they want on Twitter. They can put on, they're the ones that are still banging on about it. I haven't really heard any United fans talk about it that much. They keep talking about, how Martinelli was cooking and, Saka absolutely had Master on strings. But at the end of the day, they lost 3-1 to us.
Literally, the minute we beat them, I tweeted Invincibles no more, and that was it. I've not spoken about it since, until just now. I've moved on. I really don't care. We beat them. They can stay in their lane.
Exactly. So for me, it just obviously looks like another City title charge. I think Spurs might be in with a dark horse outside shout if Conte stays. I think Conte's second season is always a strong one at whatever club he's at.
I think they win the I think they win the FA Cup, to be honest.
Yeah,
I said it at the start of the season. But the difference is though, this is Spurs managed by somebody that actually wants to win, not somebody who's past it. They will go for it. I think they will win the FA Cup. I think we'll win the Europa League or the Carabao Cup. We'll win one of those. I do think we will.
I agree, and I think that is what then helps this squad build. Because, like you say, they have a unifying object there. They go through a tournament phase, come out the other end with a silverware, and that's something that can bond them as a squad. We saw it sort of, granted, Mourinho's reign didn't end in the best way, but we did see it that after that first season, the squad cohesion was there because they'd gone through a process. They'd ended up winning the Jose Mourinho treble that season. They got their hands on some silverware as a squad, and we saw that togetherness, and we probably haven't seen the same togetherness. I mean, granted, we saw it for spells under Ollie. I thought things were going to be peachy after the PSG game and stuff like that. But granted, it dropped off. So yeah, so I agree that if Ten Hag can get his sexy bald head on, get a grip on one of those trophies and really show this squad, if you lot come together, this is what we can do. Then I think that it really does provide him with a springboard to kick on, and for the long-term project to really thrive. Because what we can't end up with, which we've had with our past 4 managers, is as soon as the season ends, it's almost like they're under pressure again. It's just like, oh, last season wasn't good enough. Here's, the bookies are drawing up the replacements, the odds for the replacements for this person. There's gossip around, managers sniffing for jobs. We saw it with Solskjaer, regardless of people's opinions on Solskjaer or whatever, that, this is not the time to talk about that. But the man had Pochettino supposedly breathing down his neck every single game. If we lost a game, straight away it was Mauricio Pochettino would be ready to take charge of Old Trafford next week if they made. Do you know what I mean? So there's always this thing with United where the manager, it almost feels like they're never more than a couple of bad games away from a sack, and that somebody will be shoe-on straight in. So hopefully this squad can continue building. This is the most likable United squad I've seen in a long time, because this is what they do. They're tricky little bastards. Because I absolutely detested the squad 6 months ago. They were winding me up. They were moaning. They were nagging. Like, everything I saw about them just made me not like them. And now they hook you back in, don't they? They get under your skin, and they're like, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I do like them again.
They still piss me off for that reason. They still piss me off for that reason. They are the ultimate hypocrites. Like, they are the ultimate hypocrites, and that's what still pisses me off about them. Like, play for my club, but for fuck's sake, have they gone like mental? Like, is there something like clocked up here that said, we'll just go for a shining moment? Here's players. Like, they've gone for a complete bizarre moment. Like, they've completely changed their narrative, like their mindset. And I still think it's down to clicks, but I think the only thing is, I think the leader of each clique is actually making the situation better. I don't think there's any issues with certain players, but
yeah,
there are some that are quite questionable. And I agree with Richard says in the live chat as well, but the League Cup as well. That's something that we should take serious as well. But we should actually use players properly. Like, take the competition seriously. We don't have to put on like every single fringe player, but like if we are to win them, like, actually show them with respect. Like,
but also, if we wanted to put out a bit of a fringe squad, surely we're in a position where we have decent enough depth now to be putting out still a strong squad. For me, as long as we don't get beat on penalties by a bloody championship side again. Like, I don't know whether this is a Mandala effect or anything like that, but I swear, like, the last 5 years, at least one of the domestic cups, someone like Borough has knocked us out on penalties. Yeah. And I genuinely, like, it's probably bollocks, but I do feel like that happens every year.
No,
but anyway.
You saw how we got limited last year. I mean, there's people that are not going to like this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Their goalkeeper Messiah, who comes out of his goal, like, was at fault for the goal we conceded, and then he couldn't save a flaming penalty, but apparently he can save them. Like, I know De Gea can't save a penalty. I mean, he just managed against Mark Noble, but I'm just going to remind you, like, at least he actually saved one. What did the Messiah do last year? Done nothing. So, like, I'm just going to remind that for people, like, because criticism's key.
Absolutely.
Watch me get immediate pelters as well, because he knows exactly who got that comment for.
Right, so we'll swiftly move on then to sort of the last topic we're going to discuss tonight. This is a good little segue here. So, Raphael Varane's first half numbers versus Austria. Now, for me, this is really nice seeing a player that has been playing well for United also go and play well for their country, because for far too long it's been the opposite way around. We've had players playing poorly for United, and then as soon as they get, especially on France duty, I'm not going to mention names, all of a sudden they're balling out. So it's nice to, just see this natural transition that Varane is still being very good at football when he's gone away to his international club. I think it's quite a poor showing from the United lads in terms of an England call-up. And this has got to be one of the lowest United United represented England squads in recent memory. We've got Maguire and Shaw. So there's a couple of things that I just want to pick up on this. So Gareth Southgate, obviously not too long ago, did come out and say players will be picked on form, not on reputation. Now, I think at the time, most of us went, bollocks, mate. Absolute bollocks. You're chatting out your arse there, pal.
Yeah.
And shocker, it's been Calvin Phillips was announced and called up to this squad. And the guy, I swear, hasn't played a minute of Premier League football for City. We've seen Maguire and Shaw. Now, granted, Maguire and Shaw, for me, don't put a foot wrong in an England shirt, really. So I'm not aggrieved at the fact that they're there. But it's more the fact of they don't play for us at the minute. Yet Jadon Sancho, who has been in great form over the last month, once again has been snubbed. Ellis, do you think then that Sancho has been done very harshly and done dirty here by Southgate? And do you think that maybe he just doesn't like it?
I just think Southgate's a championship manager. Don't get me wrong, if you ask me in about a month and a half time, I'll tell you that it's coming home, because it is coming home. But realistically, the squad choices are awful. Jarrod Bowen's not scored and not registered a goal involvement all season, but he's in the squad. Jack Grealish, the same. Even though he scored against Wolves, should not be in the squad. Sancho has been one of the most creative players in the Premier League, and he's not in the squad. It just doesn't make any sense. Southgate is a manager who you don't air your dirty washing in public, and he does that. He contradicts himself. You're picking your team on form. He doesn't do that. He contradicts himself all the time in the media, and it's just Rashford. You could maybe make a case for again, but it's only been a burst in the last couple of weeks. But at the same time, if you're going on form, like Southgate has come out and said that they have to be in the squad. They have to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Rashford supposedly is injured, and that's why he isn't in the England setup this time round. Supposedly, I think he posted a statement saying that he was going to be in the squad or whatever, but he told them no because he's got some injuries that he needs to work on. But Reese, talk to me about Sancho and Southgate. What do you think it is that Southgate doesn't like about him, and what does Sancho need to do to get called up to an England squad?
What does Sancho need to do? Find a different nation to play for?
What about Scotland?
Yeah. Doesn't matter who he plays for. He's not going to get a game for England. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's just a pure. I don't know what the issue is. I mean, you could say it's an agenda against United, but he picks two players that aren't even good enough in general for United, let alone good enough for England. I mean, England's best team doesn't include Maguire. It doesn't include Luke Shaw. Like, not by a long shot. Your worst team includes those two. Like, in general, like, he barely got picked when he played for Dortmund as well. Like, he only played like one or two games. It's very clear. There's just a genuine agenda against Sancho. I don't know what it is. Like, maybe Southgate's just Souness in disguise. Like, who knows? Like, I genuinely don't have a clue. But I genuinely feel for him. But you know what? I'm actually kind of glad he didn't go. I'm kind of glad. The less Man United players that go to play for that flaming team, the better. Their suffering is our benefit. Their suffering is our benefit. Because if anything, we don't get players that are injured, and we don't have players that are like in form going to potentially get injured in games that aren't really going to do them any benefit. So I'm actually kind of glad that Sancho didn't go, but he is the one that made no sense altogether. Like, he made no sense being snubbed. If anyone that's in the England squad that should have been called up, he did deserve to go. But I generally do not know the exact reason behind it. I'm glad he didn't go anyway, because that means he'll be fully fit for us when we come back. I'm
glad he's not gone. I've got the squad in front of me, right, and I'll read it out, and we'll see what it thinks. Obviously, three keepers that have gone: Dean Henderson, Nick Pope, and Aaron Ramsdale. Obviously, Jordan Pickford had an injury, so that makes sense. And to be fair, those three keepers, can't really argue with that. Trent Alexander-Arnold, he'll always pick him because for some reason Southgate loves a right back.
Overrated. Next.
Yeah, of course he is. Ben Chilwell's an interesting one. Doesn't really get a game for Chelsea. Again, I'm not necessarily against it, but he doesn't really get a game for Chelsea. He comes on for 30 minutes or so. I mean, granted, he does all right when he comes on in those 30 minutes, but Connor Cody, very interesting one. When him leaving Wolves and going to Everton on loan, despite the fact that he's a self-proclaimed, red, massive Liverpool fan, odd one. Don't think he's necessarily been great in an Everton shirt. Eric Dyer, you know what? I can get behind that one. I think he's been
makes sense. He's Tottenham's best defender at the minute.
Yeah. Mark Guehi.
No.
It's an interesting one.
He's been good for Palace. He has been really good for Palace.
He was one of those that I used to scream at when he wasn't getting a call up. I used to scream, "Why is he not getting a call up?" But we'll see.
I think he's decent. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I think he's decent, but I don't think he's your starting quality. I think he's more of he's purely just rotation. But he is a decent player. He's better than the likes of Tyrone Mings and all that, like by a mile.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm better than Tyrone Mings. Reece James, fair enough, picks himself. I think he's England's best right back. Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw,
didn't deserve to go. Neither of them.
In an England shirt, it's very justified. Like,
yeah, I agree.
You can't argue with it, sadly. Like that is just.
But then
I think that's a problem. That equals complacency.
Yeah, Southgate needs to come out then and say, not that he picks people based on performance and form. He needs to come out and say, if they're good in an England shirt, I'll pick them. And realistically, they haven't put that much of a foot wrong in an England shirt.
I think what he should have said. I think what he should have said at the time when he made those comments is, "I have a core group of players that are not going to get picked every single game, but are going to be involved in every squad because they understand how I play. And then we're going to add to the squad players that are in form." That's what he should have said at the time, and then he wouldn't have been marked as a hypocrite for his comments. That's what he should have done. But of course, like Gareth Southgate is brainless.
Absolutely. John Stones, I agree with that. I think he's good. Fikayo Tomori, when he got called,
only elite centre back you've got,
because he's a phenomenal centre half. Kieran Trippier, I back that as well.
Yeah,
the only thing is that if you've got Trent and Reece in there, are you going to carry on playing Trippier at left back, like he has done previously?
Play Reece James left back, start Trippier.
Yeah,
I think that's what you did.
But I do really rate Trippier. And then Kyle Walker, who again I think is a spot on right back. But yeah, so there's 12 defenders out of the 28-man squad. We're taking 12 defenders. The midfield then, Jude Bellingham again. That's absolutely fine. No problems with that. Mason Mount, man,
Pony.
Doesn't deserve it.
Pony.
Yeah,
he's Pony.
The guy does not make sense to me. I do not understand what Frank Lampard used to see on him, what Tuchel saw in him, what Southgate sees in him, and he baffles me. Like, he flatters to deceive. He's a fugazi. Yeah. I think he was decent at Derby because obviously he was a Premier League footballer playing in a Championship side that went from finishing 6th under their previous manager to Frank Lampard took him to the lofty heights of 6th the next season. You know what I mean?
And losing the playoff final.
Yeah. And Mason Mount, for me, I just don't understand. The only good thing he does is he's an all right pick for Fantasy Premier League because he'll play most games for Chelsea and he'll pick up a couple of points there and here and there.
He'll score a hat-trick like one game a season against a Norwich at home or something. That'll just completely save your game week.
Exactly. And then obviously Calvin Phillips was called up and obviously left because he was injured and was replaced by Jordan Henderson. I don't understand why Calvin Phillips was picked in the first place.
I think he's the same as I think he's generally the same as Maguire and Shaw. The games he has played for England, like he's not the best player in the world, but when you actually look at him play for England, he's actually decent in that midfield role.
Yeah,
he does at least keep it really tight for you.
Yeah, but it's more the fact of he hasn't kicked a ball for City all season.
No, I agree. I agree with that.
Declan Rice been poor for West Ham, but West Ham have been poor as a collective, and I'd still have him. James Ward-Prowse, he's a good set piece merchant. Big fan of him. And then the forwards, Tammy Abraham, baller. He gets in. I'm happy with him.
Yep.
Jared Bowen, Ellis, you've already touched on that. It's an absolute joke of an inclusion.
No, we should not.
I'll tell you who I think. I'll tell you one thing that's actually really disgusting is that Marcus Edwards has been overlooked.
Yeah, especially after what he did the other night.
I think he's an absolute baller. I genuinely think he's the best. He's the best English winger outside, like the top 5 leagues. Like the guy is unreal. Like he's unbelievably good.
You're probably not far wrong there. Yeah. Tottenham probably sat there. I mean, I don't even know if Tottenham have a buyback in him or anything like that.
I don't think so. No, I don't think they do.
they're probably sat there crying because, I mean, granted, they've got Kulishevsky, who obviously is still a very good footballer, but Mark Edward looks the real deal, doesn't he? Maybe he's someone that we'll look at a bit further, but I don't think so. Not with Southgate.
He's been brilliant through the middle as well for Sporting. Like, either doesn't matter if it's on the right wing or through the middle. He takes each role really well, and I think that makes sense because they've got a really good tactical manager that knows what he's doing. Let's talk of the devil. You still got your bully agenda?
Phil Foden.
Just watch him come back now.
I've not really got a problem with Foden being involved. Jack Grealish shouldn't be there. Guy's been poor. Harry Kane obviously should be there. Bukayo Saka, I've got no problems with. Sterling's an interesting one because obviously he's a very, very, very good footballer. I think Chelsea have been poor, but he's been a bright light in that Chelsea side potentially.
Has to be.
Probably. I might get slaughtered for this, but not only has he been England's best player for the past 3 years, I think Raheem Sterling should actually be the England captain. I generally think he's your best player by a mile. I think he's your most experienced.
I don't think that's an outrageous comment. I don't think that deserves to be slaughtered. I think that's a very fair thing to say.
I generally think, like, in terms of like what he's done, overall contribution for you guys, Harry Kane's been amazing for goals. I'm not going to take that away in like what he does for the middle. But if you look at Raheem Sterling, like he is a brilliant player in terms of what he does. I generally think he's England's best player, and it's not even close. And I think in terms of experience, he's got the most accumulated trophies, the most accumulated success. And ideally, if you want to win something at national level, the best option you go with is go with the person with the most experience and like at the highest level with the most accumulated success should be your captain. I think that's something that they're missing a trick on.
Yeah, and he's just been a baller for us. You know, tournament after tournament, he seems to be the one that is that bright spark. And I think he deserves his place in there. I think it's been obviously so far it's been one of his poorer starts to a domestic season, but I think that's more to do with Chelsea as a whole. And then obviously the final inclusion on the squad is Ivan Toney, and I've got absolutely no qualms with him. I'm glad to see him get a cap. I think that he offers us something different as a centre forward. And there was always one centre forward that we include in a squad that was sort of finally earned their cap. You know, they've had a really good season the season before. They've really been making a name for themselves. And they're a little bit of a different. You know, do you remember when Ricky Lambert came through in 2014 when we took him to the World Cup?
That was funny.
Yeah, but it was the same thing. You know, he banged him in at Southampton. He'd earned his move to Liverpool, and obviously he was a fridge, absolute fridge. Yeah, I quite like Ings. But I think there's I think it's bizarre that
I think you look at it and I think there are obvious things that he's got wrong. Sancho's one of them. Great. I think Marcus Edwards is massively overlooked. 12 defenders, you're not really going to need them anyway. Push comes to shove. I know you guys are both English, and I'm going to say it with like chest out. I don't think you win either of those two games anyway. It doesn't really matter for you guys. It's the Nations League. Do you care? No,
because you're winning the World Cup, so it's all right, isn't it?
You're not winning the World Cup, mate. Just
relax. You're not even in it. You're not even in it. You're not even there. You're not there,
mate. I'm not just Scottish, mate. I'm at the World Cup, and I'll be winning it. Thank you very much.
You're not even there, so it's coming home. End of.
The only thing that's coming home, and I'm telling you now, months in advance, so you can prepare for this in the nicest way humanly possible. The only thing that's coming home is Man United players smiling that England have not won another trophy. They will be smiling because they'll be United over England.
It's just jealousy. It's just jealousy.
What have I got to be jealous of?
You're not there. You're not in Qatar. The magic of the World Cup. You just not.
I'm glad we are not going to Qatar. I am genuinely glad we are not. I'm glad we're not going to Qatar.
Obviously, yeah, but you're just not there. Like, it's just
doesn't matter.
Shame, really.
That does not matter to me at all. That does not matter to me as well.
Like, you know that meme where it's the guy crying, but he's got the smiling mask. That's you at the minute. That is you at the minute. Reece.
I generally have no pain at all about not going.
You and Keane can watch Nation League highlights together while the World Cup's on.
No, I'll be watching Senegal beat you in the last 16.
We'll see about that.
Keep dreaming.
We'll see about that. Right, look, I think that's a.
I'm a visionary. I don't dream.
That's a spot on place to end the show tonight. Reece, Ellis, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a great show. We've discussed plenty of stuff. We've gone off topic a load of times, but that's the beauty of Devil's Advocate. If you like the video, obviously make sure to subscribe on YouTube, Weekly Armchair Sports Talk. Follow us on Twitter and all that stuff. And give us a thumbs up, all that nonsense that you do as well when you like a video. But yeah, thank you very much everyone for joining in. I hope you enjoyed that. We did. and I hope you enjoy the rest of the international break. I know I won't, and I'm excited for Premier League football. You stop showing comments here.
That's the only comment I'm going to show all night.
Get out. Right. We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye bye.